the hardest part of the creative process?
The hard part of creating isn't necessarily having the inspiration or the thought. I feel like it's more defining which one to take, because we have a lot, especially once we both get rolling on an idea. There's a lot of possibilities, and it's trying to find out which one is the best or which one articulates it better.
Yeah, I think for us, when we make things, it's when we get rolling on it, and then all of a sudden we go to the execution and getting it to match the vision in our head. I think that's the hardest part, when all of a sudden we start getting the products back or the samples back, and we look at it and we're like, that's still not it. That's still not it. And they come back and we get like 3 or 4 rounds into it, and we're like, we've just spent all this money and it's still not there yet. Yeah. And so I think the most difficult part in that is coming to a place where it's like, do you just settle with it? And obviously you never want to settle with it, but it's like, is this as good as it gets with what we have? Is this as good as it gets with the resources that we have? And sometimes you don't want to say yes, but the answer is yes. And then that's why we make multiple collections, because it's like, we're going to do it way better the second or the third or the fourth. And so it's like, when you look at it that way, you put everything you can into it, and while it is hard, you just have to roll with it and just say, we'll do another round and we'll make it better.
Yeah, I'd almost say the hardest thing or the biggest challenge isn't so much the idea, it's like figuring out, since we're a young business, what we can afford to put it on, because that's really like our biggest limitation at this point, I would say, is not having the idea, but having the ability to connect it with the right resources to get it printed the way we want, or to have it on the right kind of fabric.
And I think also, I mean, when you think about it, for example, Apple, there's a reason why there's iPhones 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6S, 6 Plus, 10, you know, they go up the ranks, and it's like every iPhone looks somewhat the same, but there's different features on it because they're constantly perfecting it. And I feel like that's what we're doing every collection is. Yeah. First collection had its pieces where it's like, that's it. But then there's other pieces where it's like, that could have been better. But then we look at second collection, and you know, eventually third and fourth is like, we're slowly seeing that progression. We're slowly seeing the vision that we see in its entirety. And it's like, I see glimpses of where it could be, but it's still here, and we're still just trying to match those two. And I think that's the most difficult part.
But it's even the place where, because we're making something that hasn't been made before, and our thought process is very similar, we're still putting two different perspectives together, is as we're going, we have to create our own set of rules. This is what Saints and Sinners does. This is what the look is like. If you sketch, this is the kind of lines it is. If there is color or text or other images, like how do we present our thoughts within those constraints? So it's also part of the challenge is just figuring out what rules we want to define by. Like, we get to make them up. What works best, or what fits how we're shaping our brain to look as each new piece comes out.
And I think ultimately the short answer to the question is the hardest part is being satisfied with what you make.
Yeah.
And as a creative person, any person in general, it's hard to be satisfied with your work or with whatever you make, because you always know, you're always competing with the ideal in your head or the vision in your head. And I think that's what pushes us so much, is we see what it could be, and we just keep working towards that, and we keep grinding and rubbing up against all the imperfections, and it's like, we're almost there, we're almost there, we're almost there. And we think that we can make this into what we really see it being, so.
How do you transition your mindset from one collection to the next without getting stuck?
Some of these, I'm going to be completely honest, when I looked at them, I was like, I don't know, because I haven't gotten stuck yet.
Yeah, we haven't gotten stuck. I
think that's good. It's
right.
More just...
It's very linear. It's a
Yeah.
very linear process for us,
builds.
which is what I think makes us more confident in knowing like God's hand is on it.
Yeah.
Knowing that He gives us this little seed of an idea in the first collection, and then it was like, ooh, let's follow that. And then there was another idea, and it's like, ooh, let's follow that and see where it goes. And some of them end up like converging together, and it's just like these little roots that pop out. And so we've never really gotten stuck on the concept. It's just kind of flowed out from wherever we go. And I mean, we came up with the second collection idea in the first, and while we were making second, we came up with the third. So it's like we always are having that second part or that third part to the story that just kind of keeps going. So I don't think it's nice to say that we've never gotten stuck yet.
But I think the difference or why that's there is because all of our pieces fit into a narrative. And whether or not that started intentionally, it's definitely the way we both think and the way we both, as concept builds on concept, that's the way we process it. So I think it's been very natural to make them each fit into their own narrative. And with that, it's not just an isolated, like, oh, this shirt's gonna look really cool if we put a skull on it. It's like, no, the skull is part of the story. The story needs to continue evolving. We know where it's heading. So it's a lot easier to be like, naturally, this is going to have to express something to get from this point to the end point. And we've had ideas about where the end is.
Right.
So it's more just having the fun part of exploring how you get from this concept to this end, completed thought, kind of.
Yeah. And if the question was more general of like, do you ever get stuck? And the answer is yes, we do.
Yeah.
But from the perspective of getting stuck on what do we choose? Like, we have all these ideas, which one do we pick? Which one do we pursue the hardest, or which one do we pursue the most? And those are the places where we get stuck, where it's like, and at the same time, in reflection of the first question, like, we get stuck when we see an idea and it's like we still don't have the resources to flesh it out yet. And it's just like, if we had just maybe a few more dollars, or even just a different like connection into the fashion industry itself, it's like we could make that idea, but we can't yet. So it's like we don't necessarily get stuck, because like we just reroute, and it's like, okay, we'll go this route until that route opens up.
What is your favorite design from the first collection and the second collection?
I gotta think.
Yeah, think about it. Yeah, I know. Mine have migrated a little bit. From first collection, it's like my top 3. It still is. Because conceptually, the hand heart was one that it just clicked. So that one has like a lot of emotional pull to me. And then the one that was the most fun for me to make was the skull hand in the first collection.
Chapter 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was so fun to make. It was really cool because I got to paint and draw. And so that one just like has a special place for making it. But I really love the Saint Skull one. I think it's just such
Chapter
a
8.
good big front. Thank you for the chapter.
Right. I only remember collection 1.
Yeah.
I couldn't say them all, but
Yeah.
collection 2, I'm just like, I don't even remember.
We worked with it last
Yeah.
time. It makes sense.
Right. So for me, it's chapter 8 easily.
Yeah.
The Saint Skull with the
It's
rose
so
in his
cool.
mouth. And then chapter 4, basically anything with a front design. So the big hand with the
same.
heart, just because of my love for massive in-your-face graphics. I do like the Sinner's Prayer. Was that chapter 9?
Yeah, I think so.
Something like that. And just because of the gold on the back and the way it translated, like, we're really happy with that.
I still want to paint on it.
Yeah. We still haven't done that yet.
It's gonna be real.
Trying to think what else. Second collection, hands down, Jesus and Mary.
Yeah.
That one's by far my favorite.
I think in terms of how it turned out, Jesus and Mary is my favorite too. But conceptually, I would still go between chapter 1, the Genesis one, and St. Francis. And the reason I would do that is chapter 1, I like the chest drawing the best.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, I still I am not a snake person, but I love the painting on the back of it. You don't have to be a believer to wear these pieces, but especially as a believer, I think there's so much shame and heaviness that people keep walking through life with, and just being like, when's it over, without even realizing what the Holy Spirit's already done.
Is there a design you wish you would have put in the collection that didn't make it in?
No. Short answer, comma.
In further stretch of that, there was a couple of designs that we both liked and honestly had a ton of time poured into them. That Grant especially was working on techniques to make things look painted and working through eyes and hands. And so we took a ton of photos and we looked for a ton of photos. And after a couple weeks working on it, we're like, nope, none of those go.
Right.
And while I think it was the right call to make, it definitely was a space where like a lot of time went into those.
Right.
But it was the right call not to use them. They don't fit the same way.
Yeah, I think the question in general is like there's a lot of pieces that we make or designs that we make in a collection that we want to see surface outside of that collection. But when we look at the cohesion of each collection, it's like everything that's here is supposed to be here and nothing else that we omit is supposed to be there. So it's like I don't wish like, oh man, I wish we would have put that in there. It's like, no, we just save it for later for something else.
Yeah.
So it's like everything that's here belongs here and everything that's not here doesn't belong here because we're so obsessed within like the 12 for first collection, the 6 for second, and it's like these are the ones that we picked and we don't wish otherwise. So
But that also is where having a narrative behind it all makes sense and honestly makes narrowing or making choices like that simpler, because it's easy to be like, this is what it's saying, this is what it's supposed to be conveying, this is the idea behind it. If you can't look at it and after just looking at it without talking at it to one of us, see where things are correlating or how they're illustrating a concept, in this case memento mori, then it doesn't fit. And so in that sense, it definitely makes it easier than just being like, it just looks too different or it doesn't hold up, because it may look really different but still fit and may illustrate the point and fit within the conversation.
How long have you guys been working together, and how long did it take you to make the first and second collection?
we've been working together for coming up on 2 years?
Yeah,
2 years?
that's
2 years? Wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Started, I mean, we worked on variations of the first collection for over a year, right?
A long time.
And then we actually hit it and we made it within like 8 months because we scrapped a lot of it.
It was a lot of work leading up to being, this is a whole collection, this all fits. That's when we figured out there was a narrative linking them all together. It wasn't just random designs that were relevant to emotions that we're talking about.
And it had a different name.
Yeah.
I called it Lost Art, which was a stupid name. And then I just changed it to Saints and Sinners randomly because there was a phrase that I used on a t-shirt that I just put Saints and Sinners on it. And I'm like, that seems more like of a relatable name.
Yeah.
So really like working on Saints and Sinners was 8 months. Working on Lost Art plus Saints and Sinners was like 14 months.
Yeah.
So it's like Saints and Sinners was birthed and then it was 8 months and then we released in August and then moved into second collection like immediately and that took 8 weeks, which was stupid.
That was a choice though. First collection wasn't a choice and like we were just gonna take as long as we needed to get things done. Second collection, Grant was like, we have 8 weeks. What are we gonna make?
Right, let's do it. See what happens.
It wasn't what are we gonna make. He knew what we were gonna make.
I know.
There
everything.
was the vision. And I just wanted to die a little. So much work. But it was good. It was good. It was solid. It worked. We learned a lot in the process. And we continue just to refine and define who we are and how we're going to make this work.
And so much of the time constraints were based off of me just being competitive. Like, how can we make something so perfect in 8 months and take as long as we could and make every little detail like the best it could be, but then in 8 weeks, what's the best thing we can make in 8 weeks? It was like 8 months versus 8 weeks. Can we still make something that rivals first, or could it be even better? So some of that is just me and Joe, like what can we do? And if you never actually like ask the question like what can we do in this length of time or what can we do in general, like you'll never find out. And so much of that was just like a creative challenge to ourselves of like, can we work fast? Because we come up with so many ideas that it's like if we put constraints on it, how many more could we come up with like very quickly?
Focused does this make our creating?
Yeah, so it was very much just like us being idiots.
And also slightly competitive.
Right.
Yeah,
so.
for sure it was. It's a big part of it.